Let's start, though, with Japanese Pete Rose. He had a press conference, non-press conference, press conference yesterday, and I'm excited to talk about it. Our good friend Michael Duarte down in NBC LA covering the Dodgers, the Lakers, and the Rams. Michael, before we get to the whole statement and not taking questions thing, I know every fan base will defend their guy. We're all guilty of this, right? In our fan bases, like no matter what the allegations, if he's your guy, you defend him. What's been the reaction from Dodger fans over the last week to this kind of coming out of nowhere?
I would say they're kind of aligned with the same memo that must have gone out to the team and the players as well, which is we're going to support our guy. We're going to have his back. We're going to believe his version of events in this story. And that seems to be the consensus I've seen from Dodger fans. A lot of people saying, wait for judgment, wait for more to come out, wait for Ohtani to speak. And I will say, to their credit, I was in the back of the room for that press conference yesterday. Exactly. What was that? It was a reading of a statement, throwing him to the Wolves and the Lions, and we'll get into that a little bit. And I wanted to read his body language, of course, how he came out. Did he make eye contact with people? Did he seem angry? Did he seem sad? Which was a little bit of all of that. He really kind of seemingly stared blankly when he was reading his statement. I didn't see him make eye contact with anyone there in the room, any fellow journalists of mine. He did seem emphatic when he read the first part of his statement, which was that I never bet on baseball. I never bet on sports. I never had anyone make bets for me. I never sent money to a bookie. And then a little bit later when he was talking about, that his interpreter, who he was obviously really, really close with, and as we all know in this industry, how close they were. Ippei was like a shadow for Shohei. Really, really hurt, feeling sad. At least I could read the emotion in his voice when it came to the betrayal part. So that's kind of what we saw. But again, I think now still here, and you guys may agree with me, Andy and Brandon, that we have more questions than answers at this point. And this is something that's not going to go away. But at least to answer your question, Dodger fans are seemingly giving him the benefit of the doubt. And certainly his version of events seems plausible. Not necessarily the most plausible, but I suppose plausible.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here is the language barrier, because it's, you're already having an interpreter or somebody there to exchange what's being said on both fronts. And so I'm almost kind of curious, Michael. It feels like the Dodgers can kind of get out of this a little bit with it, in the sense of they're not going to do sit-down Q&A. I mean, I asked you to come on the show yesterday morning, and you were like, he's got a prepared statement. I'm like, you guys already kind of had an idea that was not going to be a legitimate press conference in the traditional American press conference way. And then he reads the statement. Where I have trouble is he can look sincere and sound sincere on some of this stuff. What and I think many people, is you highlight the questions. How do you come out and square that you paid off this debt by your dear friend, and then you reverse course, and now he's a massive thief who has disappointed you? I think if you didn't have this language barrier, none of this would line up, and I think there may be even more pressure on him. Where does this go from here? Because those are real quotes. It was, I paid it off. He's a friend, and he's got a quote like, this is my brother. I'm around him every day. And now it's betrayal, massive theft, deception, and it's none of that lines up. But because we have this language barrier, it feels like it's kind of a way for him and the Dodgers to kind of get out of the traditional way of doing things from a journalistic standpoint.
Yeah, that's a great point that you made, and I'll answer and address both of those questions there, which is kind of like, what's going on, what we know, the confusing storylines. And guys, this thing has more drama, more twists and turns than an episode of Succession right now. And so I want to make a point that I don't think anyone and a lot of people haven't brought up, and that is Shohei Ohtani's agent, right, Nez Balelo. He has a history of this kind of complete denial, complete I'm innocent, this is the story we're going with before. Remember, this was the agent for Ryan Braun when Ryan Braun was testing positive for PEDs, and the whole who had the urine and how long scandal that went along. And remember, it was Nez Balelo who came up with the game plan that Ryan Braun was just going to deny everything, and then he never did any PEDs and anything. And that turned out to not be the whole truth. This is that same agent involved here. And why I bring that up is because, listening to Tisha Thompson, the ESPN reporter who broke this story, And this has been a wild week for me, guys. You talked about like when we reached out, I'm just like, at this point, I'm so exhausted. So if I sound tired, I've been staying awake till 7 in the morning while they were in Korea, and now flipping my schedule here as they've come back. And so it's just been a really exhausting week. And that week started about a week ago with ESPN first making contact, reaching out to Nez Balelo, his Shohei Ohtani's agent at CAA, to say, hey, we have these 2 wire transfers, both $500,000 each, both totaling $1 million. They are coming from Shohei Ohtani's account. His name is on them, and they both say loan in the memo and description line. What do you know about this? And he did not get back to them. He did not respond to that original inquiry. And then he goes and hires a crisis communications spokesperson that's the person 24 hours later who contacts Tisha Thompson, the ESPN reporter. He also goes out and hires a law firm. So, like, these are red flags right there for me, right? If this was all innocent and it's all Ipe, why is he going out and hiring crisis communicators and he's spokespeople and he's hiring a legal team and he's, having them handle all of this, not speaking to anybody himself? And I find it really hard to believe for a man who's been here in the U.S., because you talked about the language barrier for the last 7 years, and I know it because I've seen him. He speaks some English. He speaks English with some of his teammates. I've seen him. He's picked some of it up. He's maybe not 100% fluent or comfortable speaking in English, but over the 7 years of living here, he's picked up a lot and knows it, that there wasn't a conversation between Ohtani, also Ipe, this crisis spokesperson they handled for this situation, the legal team, to try to figure out what's the game plan. And to your point, they go with this original story to explain. And that spokesperson, who obviously also told ESPN, I'm very new on the job. I just got hired. I'm trying to get up to speed. But she gave a quote directly from Ohtani saying, yes, I sent several large payment, the maximum that I could send. I did it to help him get out of his debt. So, that was the story they went with. Unfortunately, what they realized too late was that story indemnifies Shohei Ohtani to potential legal action for sending those wire transfers to an illegal bookie. And also, the biggest thing, exposes him to MLB potential punishment, whether it's a fine or a suspension, because it is literally written in the CBA that you cannot bet with an illegal bookie. Obviously, you cannot bet on baseball as well, but you cannot bet with a legal bookie. You cannot send them any money or payments. And so there is precedent for this. I think Jared Kozar, the Marlins, people have said, in 2015 was caught gambling with an illegal bookie. He was fined $450,000 for it. But I think any negativity, any negative press in the eyes of Nez Balelo and the Ohtani team tarnishes the billion-dollar brand that he is.
Yeah,
and it's in the best interest of everybody: baseball, the Dodgers, MLB, sponsors, New Balance, the country of Japan, everybody, to prop up that billion-dollar brand.
Gosh, that was why I didn't know, like the crisis management stuff I didn't know about.
Well, now that the agent's the Ryan Braun guy,
and
I really don't believe anything they're saying.
I didn't know any of that stuff. I mean, this is the unique thing too, though, that I have been thinking, like, to your point about the legal trouble that he could get in. Like, he is Shohei Ohtani. Like, I would imagine, even if it's found out that he was gambling, as long as it's not baseball, like that's the bridge that you can't cross. But if he's just gambling and he's sending this money to a legal bookie, like, do we really think the feds are going to lock this guy up, or that baseball's going to suspend him for a long time? He's their golden goose. They can't lose this guy for half a season. That's the hard part that I've had with it, is as long as it's not related to baseball. If it was him making the bet saying, like, yeah, some international soccer matches, it's illegal in California, this is my only way to gamble, I imagine he gets slapped with the fine and that's about it. So you do think, if that is the case, it's just the PR mostly that they're worried about?
Yeah, I think so, because I even looked up, when this story first broke, the legal precedent here in California for that. And I couldn't find anywhere where the clients of an illegal bookie are taking a fall or getting jail time or fines. It is always the bookie, and the law actually is. And it starts with a misdemeanor. So, me here living in California, if I were to text you guys, Andy and Brandon, and be like, hey, give me your bets. I'll be your bookie. I'll place them for you. Boom. That's a misdemeanor, maximum sentence of 1 year if I were to get booked for that. Now, if I took an office space and made it the headquarters for the illegal booking operation, if I accepted wire payments and money from people, then you could get a maximum 3 years. But that's kind of what the criminal ramifications here in California and what the law says. And like we talk about, it even goes in there and talks about pool betting. Like if you did like a Super Bowl pool or a March Madness pool with your friends, in one of these 12 states where it's illegal, California being one of them, there's nobody really gets busted for any of those things, and it's written into the code that, up to a certain amount of money you can do that. So I don't really think criminally he's looking at anything. Had it turned out he was the one making these bets, which what we know and what you can think is a lot different than what you can prove. And from my understanding, there ain't no way they can prove it was Shohei who placed these bets either way, because Ipe was the one doing everything, communicating with Matthew Ballier, the bookie, sending the text, placing the bets, all of those things. And so it really just comes down to this wire. And as we've seen with the precedent, even if MLB investigated and found out he did send the wire, Shohei Ohtani I'm talking about, it would be a slap on the wrist. Like we said, a small fine, a small suspension. But from the PR standpoint, you want nothing to tarnish the brand. You want nothing to lose sponsors, nothing to turn off fans. And that's what we're looking at here. And if the lawyers and the team and Nez Bilello, his agent, if they all said, look, there's no way anyone can prove that it was you who sent the wire, this is the story we're going for, that's where it's at that point. So because that was the last statement released by the agent and the legal team and the crisis spokesperson right after that first game in Korea, after he was fired and everything, I was not surprised by the statement he read, because it seemed like this is the angle and this is the story, and we're sticking to it.
Michael, we're really appreciative that you hopped on this morning. I know it's tough on the West Coast to get guests, and you mentioned your schedule, so I know you're kind of running on probably some sleep deficit here. So thank you for hopping on. I do want to ask you quickly, you got about 60 seconds. What is it like to just kind of cover him? There's a lot of huge, massive star athletes in L.A. What is he like to cover? Obviously, you hear that Ichiro had this. He could speak English. He just chose to go through interpreter, so he didn't have to do as much media stuff. How accessible is he for you guys down there? What's he like? How big is, kind of the entourage? Like, what is Shohei Ohtani like to cover?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And what you talked about is the $1 million question. I asked Nez Bilello directly myself. I said, for the last couple of years, this guy's only been available to the media in Anaheim, because I also go down there and cover them, when the Dodgers are gone or if they're playing each other in Freeway Series. I said, this guy only speaks to the media through his interpreter, obviously, on the days he pitches. So we only get him once every 6 days. But now he's not going to pitch this year. So is that going to still be the plan moving forward, or are we going to get this guy more often? Because I want to know. I'm vested. I'm covering him. I need to know these things. And he's like, no, we're going to set it up. He's going to speak more. I doubt that happens now. The Dodgers have been protecting him this entire time, his teammates protecting him. I don't think we're going to see, especially with this scandal still ongoing, the MLB investigation still open, the federal investigation still open, and now potentially a criminal investigation against Ipe as he's, claiming theft here. I don't think we're going to get to speak to him anytime soon. And that's what makes this frustrating. And Ohtani has created this. He hadn't done himself any favors. He has created this secrecy around him, this privacy, right? We didn't know the name of the dog. We didn't know anything about the free agency process. That's all from Nez and CAA, as we mentioned, by the way. This man who we haven't really seen in public apparently was dating, engaged, and gets married without the soul knowing. So a lot of secrecy around him. And that's why it makes it difficult to cover him, because we don't really know anything about him, and he doesn't give us anything, and he doesn't speak to the media very often. And now with a new translator and this scandal, I don't think we're going to get a chance to speak to him and ask him any questions directly anytime soon. And the last thing I'll say, guys, because I know we're running out of time, I've never covered an athlete where just taking batting practice for the first time or throwing has hundreds of photographers and cameramen around him from all over the world, down to his hitting in the cage or throwing program or first time taking long toss. All of it is covered extensively as if it was the World Series, and that's something I've never really been around before.
Fascinating stuff. If you really are willing to be our bookie, I'll take Gonzaga plus 5.5 Friday against Purdue. Kind of like them against Edie, so just going to throw that out there.
Well. Let's not act like we're not five. Let's not act like we're not 5 years removed or 5 years away from Ohtani being on DraftKings. Ohtani's NBA bets tonight.
My parlay. Play with me, Michael Duarte. Great stuff covering the Dodgers for NBC down in LA. Go give him a follow on Twitter at Michael J. Duarte. Good friend of the program. Thanks for the time, man, and the update on the story. That was awesome.
You got it, guys. Anytime. Have a good show.
Yeah, thanks, man. Michael Duarte. I almost said you too. You ever do that awkwardly in public?
I do that with people at their work. Like yesterday, I stopped at a joint and got some food, and they're like, all right, have a good day. I was like, you too. And they're in the middle of a shift, and I'm like, maybe they will.
Yeah. I do that sometimes when I'm like, you get somebody hands you a meal at a restaurant. Enjoy your meal. You too. It's like, oh, damn it. You just served me. You're not eating.
Well, you're not eating, so this is awkward.